Davy, I'm awesome. And welcome to Davy's Awesome Movies, where I review the styles of movies that I love, the alternative, B-rated, cult-style flicks. And being that this Sunday is Father's Day, it's time for another in a series of Father's Day classics. This one came out in 1989, and was directed by Jeff Burr, written by John Auerbach, and produced by William Burr, Darren Scott, and Carol Hempman. Distributed by ITC Entertainment and Millimeter Films. Ladies and gentlemen, Stepfather 2. Make room for Daddy.
Honey, I'm home.
Hi, honey. A good day at the office?
The usual.
I gotta say, nowadays that sounds like a porno title. The movie opens with a recap of the last movie, where Jerry Blake, played by Terry O'Quinn, was killed at the end of the movie. However, it's then revealed that he was not killed, he's alive! And it looked like they were trying to shock us, but it's a sequel. We saw the cover, we know. Jerry has now been reprimanded to a psychiatric hospital, and he's about to meet with the new psychiatrist, Dr. Danvers.
Want to tell me something about yourself?
Why are you asking him? Just go watch the first movie. Or if you ain't got that much time, you could watch my review of it. Dr. Danvers is trying to build trust with Jerry.
Remove this man's handcuffs.
Doc.
You know, I feel like in these movies they're a little too easy going with the whole handcuffs thing. I feel like in real life, somebody that's this dangerous, they build trust some other way. Not taking his handcuffs off. Something like, hey, here's a Snickers. Dr. Danvers even tells the guard to leave, and the guard reminds him that's against policy.
I make policy now, so just leave, please.
Wonder how this is going to end up. Later we see Jerry in his cell, still very agitated. He's even collecting his hairs and keeping them. I don't know if that's because he's psycho or he's just really badly trying to get on the show My Strange Addiction. Or Hoarders. Later, Jerry has a surprise for Dr. Danvers, hidden inside of a little figurine he made. Which is why you keep the cuffs on, and you let the guard stay in the room. Duh! But now Jerry has to decide what to do about the guard outside. He uses the guard's own club to beat him to death. Which is a message that, yes, our stupidity can affect others. Seriously, I feel like every death in this movie is the fault of Dr. Danvers. He's the real villain. So now, he just strolls out of the prison. But now he needs to get out of Washington. So what does he do? He goes to the train station, he finds somebody with a big trunk, and let's say he borrows their car and takes their wallet. Kills him. But taking the whole wallet thing worked out for him, but nowadays wouldn't really do much. No one carries cash anymore. Of course, now Jerry goes about changing his look and his name. He also has to decide on where he's going to relocate to. He picks Los Angeles. Probably because that's where they were filming this. In Los Angeles, he meets a realtor named Carol, played by Meg Foster, who is showing him a home for lease. Which is perfect, since he will not be there long. Meg Foster was almost not cast in this movie because of her extremely light blue eyes. Those eyes are why she usually got cast as some kind of a villainess, like Evelyn in Masters of the Universe. While showing Gene Clifford, Jerry Blake's new name, around the house, he has a question.
Where's the basement?
There is no basement.
Yeah, most places in California do not have basements because they're not really needed. California doesn't have a big tornado problem. They get earthquakes. And during an earthquake, you do not want to be in the basement. Gene comments on what a nice neighborhood it is.
You couldn't ask for a better neighborhood.
Yeah, you could. It just wouldn't be in L.A. Carol mentions that she's divorced and lives across the street with her son, Todd, who is played by the late Jonathan Brandis. And she's a little miffed at him because he is skateboarding inside the house. And she told him not to.
I didn't know you were home.
Yes, kids really look you right in the face and use excuses like that. As if it's no longer against the rules because I wasn't watching. Then again, that is one thing you learn as a parent having children. You learn how dumb you sounded as a kid saying the same exact crap. As Gene Clifford, he is now posing as a family therapist, holding sessions in his home. Carol is there talking about her dentist ex-husband who left for his hygienist. And then again, in my opinion, that's what you get for marrying one of those sadists. Some time goes on and Carol invites Gene over for dinner, which shows not only is he a bad family man, but he is a terrible therapist. Seriously, there are rules against this.
When did you decide to be a shrink?
About 10 minutes ago, Gene goes outside and decides to show Todd, who is having a hard time dealing with his father leaving, how to throw a baseball. So now this movie is going from a slasher film to Field of Dreams. Whatever. Then he shows Todd how to work with tools. Basically all the basic stuff to get in with a good single mom. You get the kid to like you, so you can bang their mommy. But one day, Jean goes to Carol's and she's got company.
Phil Graylin, Carol's husband.
Yeah, that's not good. Jean goes home to throw his workshop fit like he did in the first movie. And while this is going on, one of his patients, Maddie, who is also Carol's best friend, comes over because she forgot her mail carrier's hat. He's not answering the door, so she just lets herself in. She's also very nosy, so she starts snooping around. When he catches her, she explains that she let herself in because she tried the doorbell and he must not have heard it.
No, I guess not.
She leaves with her hat and possibly a little bit of extra urine in her panties. Carol comes over to talk to Jean as a therapist, not a potential boyfriend, about the possibility of taking her ex-husband back.
Why don't you ask Phil to stop by and have a chat with me tonight?
No! She convinces Phil to go see Jean.
Couldn't hurt.
Phil's gonna die. As Phil and Jean are talking, Phil's making it clear that he is getting Carol back no matter what, and then Jean offers him a drink. Well, that was a smash. Then Jean starts stabbing him over and over again with the broken beer bottle. The reason for all the cutaway and the blood squirting is because when the Weinsteins saw this movie, they said it needed more blood. The director, Jeff Burr, refused to do the reshoots, so they hired Doug Campbell to come in and do the reshoots. But Terry O'Quinn had also refused to film the reshoots because he felt this extra blood for no reason was just incredibly unnecessary. So there's plenty of blood in this movie, but it just kind of doesn't fit in. Jean is rolling up Phil into his carpet when he gets a call from Carol. She wants to know how things are going.
We're just wrapping things up.
Bada bing! She also requests that Jean have Phil call her later. And he says he'll give him the message.
Carol wants you to call her.
Hey, he may be committing murder, but at least he's not lying. To get rid of the body, Jean puts Phil into the back of Phil's trunk, takes it to a junkyard, smashes it up, and tells Carol that he decided he's not ready for this, and he left.
How do I know he won't come back again?
It's a safe bet. A few days later, Jean and Carol announce that they are engaged, and everyone is excited for them, applauding. Everyone, that is, except Maddie. She's concerned, and she's nosy.
Carol, I don't think you know him well enough to marry him.
She's right, just nosy. Of course, Carol just brushes her off, and now she wants Jean to stay the night. But Jean wants to abstain until their wedding night. And of course, Carol gets mad and storms off. But Jean takes that purity ring seriously. The next day, while Jean is enjoying a nice, yummy breakfast of crispy rice, which I ain't got nothing to say about that. I know all about generic brands. You guys got Apple Jacks, I got Apple Dapples. You guys got Honeycomb, I got Honey Puffs. You guys got Fruity Pebbles, I got Dinosaur Bits. But while he is eating his cereal, he gets a call from Maddie, who wants to meet with him. Maddie wanted to meet with Jean to let him know that she is onto him. She knows that he is living a lie. How does she know this? She went through his mail, which is very illegal and extremely unethical. Seriously, I think it's against that oath or whatever you guys take. The proof she has, she got a letter for his 25th high school reunion. In the letter, it talked about what a great basketball player he was. Even has a picture of him and his basketball team, but she can't find him. To which he brushes it off like, hey, people change after 25 years.
Not this much, Jean.
Why would you confront him with this? Why wouldn't you just go report him?
Duh!
But instead, she says she's going to tell Carol. And he asks for an opportunity to tell her himself.
You got until 5.
No, Maddie. You have till 5. But instead of telling Carol, Jean decides he's going to give in to her sensations. Jonas Brothers be damned. But explains that his hesitation was because she was afraid to see the scars that he explains was from a crazy patient he had in Connecticut. While they're doing the hibbity-dibbity, Maddie puts on her bunny slippers and tries to call Carol. She's not answering. Just before you guys start judging, bunny slippers are ridiculously comfortable. When Maddie awakes, she tries to call Carol again. But instead, she gets choked up. Again, you should have just reported him. Jean types out a suicide note and makes it look like Maddie killed herself. But the real tragedy of this? She lost one of her slippers. And of course, Gene wanders outside whistling.
Who's there?
He runs off and hopefully he learns to knock it off with the frickin' whistling. Seriously, it's annoying. He goes back to Carol, who's basking in the ambience, with a nice bottle of wine. She asks how he got a bottle of wine at that time of night.
I have my secrets.
We know. We saw Lost. And some of us are still pissed off by it. A few days go by. They're at Maddie's place that is now emptied out. And Maddie's old neighbor Sam comes over. Turns out he is blind. But he does mention that he heard somebody coming out of the house whistling. Which is why, unless you're a teapot, don't whistle. But Carol now wants to find this guy and get answers as to why Maddie killed herself. Doesn't realize she already found him.
Carol, people die.
Yeah, especially around you. Now, the wedding. As Carol is getting ready, she notices the wedding present from Maddie's parents. A case of the very same wine that he had brought home that night. She also hears something. Carol asks Todd where he learned that song. It's a pretty popular song. It's Camptown Races.
Gene taught me.
Oh, no, freaking knock it off! We already know! Carol confronts Gene.
You will never find a better family man than me.
Carol, you should really watch the news more often. Especially because this is the 80s when they actually just reported the news. They didn't tell you how to feel about it. Todd walks in just as Gene is about to kill his mother. Which could be worse. Most of the time, kids walk in on something else. Todd runs away from him, hides in the janitor's closet, which Gene locks from the outside, and decides that while he's locked in there, he's going to go finish off Carol. But Todd finds some tools in there and uses them to take the hinge off the door and get out. Which means that came back to haunt Gene. And now he's gonna. But Todd runs in and hammers the sharp end into Gene's chest. Todd rules. But now, the wedding guests. This movie had the original Red Wedding. He'll be back. He won't be played by Terry O'Quinn, but he'll be back. So there you have it. That's the follow-up to the classic slasher film, The Stepfather. Stepfather 2, Make Room for Daddy. This movie did okay, had less than $1 million budget, and did about 1.5 in its limited theatrical box office. Very limited. It wasn't even supposed to go into theaters. It was supposed to be straight to video. And because of the cult following that The Stepfather had, this one made a couple bucks on video. However, it wasn't very well received by critics. At all. Then again, it also wasn't very well received by the audience. The audience was very disappointed in this movie. They were hoping for a lot more, especially considering that The Stepfather was such a big hit among audiences. Even though they did make a third Stepfather movie, Terry O'Quinn would not come back to play a stepfather. He said in later interviews because he didn't want to be typecasted in that kind of role. I have other theories as to why he probably didn't want to do it, but we'll get into that when I review Stepfather 3. This movie did have the late Jonathan Brandis, who I was a big fan of as a kid, being in movies like Sidekicks, The Second Neverending Story, among others. He sadly committed suicide years later over depression because of his career just really not panning out the way he wanted it to, and final straw was when he auditioned to play Anakin Skywalker and it went to Hayden Christensen. But oddly enough, one of the people up to play the role of young Todd was a young Brian Austin Green, obviously a couple years before 90210 had come out. As far as my personal feelings on The Stepfather 2, it was good, but I definitely wouldn't say great, and I wouldn't say it lived up to the first Stepfather movie. The first Stepfather movie at the time was an original piece based off of known killer John List, who hadn't been caught at that point. As a matter of fact, the character was based off of John List. He was actually caught the same year Stepfather 2 came out, a few months before it came out. I don't know if they were already working on the sequel or not, but hey, kind of kooky. But like I said, I don't think this movie lived up to the first one. Kind of feel like this is one of those times that Hollywood really messed up by making any sequels, because no sequel was going to be as good as the first one. The first one is a classic and really, really good. Sometimes it's best to just leave it alone. But that's really just not how Hollywood works. Seems like if they make even one nickel of a profit, then we're going to get a sequel. Even if we really didn't want one. But I will say, I don't agree with a lot of the criticism that it was bad. I will say, though, I do agree with some of the criticism that it did kind of lean more to just being a typical slasher film versus the first one being its own thing. However, I do think it's worth watching. And a lot of people liked it a lot better when the third one came out. So, on that note, if you haven't seen Stepfather 2, I do recommend you check out Stepfather 2. Just don't get your hopes up of it being as good as the first one. It was good, just not as. So there you have it, that's my movie review this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you get notifications for when I post new videos, and leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of Stepfather 2. And kids, make sure to wish your fathers a happy Father's Day. Love you guys.